Hare Krishna. Today we'll be discussing the translation of a 52 text of chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. When your intelligence has passed out of the dense forest of delusion, you shall become indifferent to all that has been heard and all that is to be heard. There are many good examples in the lives of great devotees of our Lord, of those who became indifferent to the rituals of the Vedas simply by devotional service to the Lord. When a person factually understands Krishna and his relationship with Krishna, he naturally becomes completely indifferent to the rituals of fruitive activities, even though an experienced Brahmana. Sri Madhavendra Puri, a great devotee and acharya in the line of the devotees, says, O Lord, in my prayers 3 times a day, all glory to you. Bathing, I offer my obeisances unto you, O demigods, O forefathers. Please excuse me for my inability to offer you my respects. Now, wherever I sit, I can remember the great descendant of the Yadu dynasty, Krishna, the enemy of Kamsa, and thereby I can free myself from all sinful bondage. I think this is sufficient for me. The Vedic rites and the rituals are imperative for neophytes, comprehending all kinds of prayer 3 times a day, taking a bath early in the morning, offering respect to the forefathers, etc. But one is fully in Krishna consciousness and is engaged in his transcendental loving service, one becomes indifferent to all these regulative principles because he has already attained perfection. If one can reach the platform of understanding by service to the Supreme Lord Krishna, he has no longer to execute different types of penances and sacrifices as recommended in revealed scriptures. And similarly, if one has not understood the purpose of the Vedas is to reach Krishna and simply engages in the rituals, etc., then he is uselessly wasting time in such engagements. Persons in Krishna consciousness transcend the limit of the Shabda Brahma or range of the Vedas and Upanishads. Text 53 translation. When your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, and when it remains fixed in the trance of a self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. To say that one is in samadhi is to say that one has fully realized Krishna consciousness. That is, one in full samadhi has realized Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. The highest perfection of self-realization is to understand that one is eternally the servitor of Krishna and that one's only business is to discharge one's duties in Krishna consciousness. A Krishna conscious person or unflinching devotee of the Lord should not be disturbed by the flowery language of Vedas, nor be engaged in fruitive activities for promotion to the heavenly kingdom. In Krishna consciousness, one comes directly into the communication with Krishna, and thus all directions from Krishna may be understood in the transcendental state. One is sure to achieve results by such activities and attain conclusive knowledge. One has only to carry out the orders of Krishna or his representative, the spiritual master. Text 54 translation. Arjuna said, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in a transcendence? How does he speak? And what is his language? And how does he sit? And how does he walk? As there are symptoms for each and every man in terms of his particular situation, similarly, one who is Krishna consciousness has particular nature, talking, walking, thinking, feeling, etc. As a rich man has his symptoms by which he is known as a rich man, as a diseased man has his symptoms by which he is known as diseased, or as a learned man has his symptoms, so a man in transcendental consciousness of Krishna has a specific symptoms in various dealings. One can know his specific symptoms from the Bhagavad-Gita. Most important is how the man in Krishna consciousness speaks, for speech is the most important quality of any man. It is said that a fool is undiscovered as long as he does not speak, and certainly a well-dressed fool cannot be identified unless he speaks. But as soon as he speaks, he reveals himself at once. The immediate symptom of a Krishna conscious man is that he speaks only of a Krishna and of matters relating to him. other symptoms then automatically follow. Text 55. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha. The blessed Lord said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of a sense desire which arise from a mental concoction, and when his mind finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service of the Lord has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendentally situated has no good qualification because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kind of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction artificially. Such sense desires cannot be stopped. But if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation. For this devotional service will instantly help one on the platform of transcendental consciousness. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from a petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Text 56 Translation. One who is not disturbed in spite of the threefold miseries, who is not elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called a sage of steady mind. The word Muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for a mental speculation without coming to the factual conclusion. It is said that every Muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a Muni differs from other Munis, he cannot be called a Muni in the strict sense in the term, but a Sthitadhimuni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from the ordinary Muni. The Sthitadhimuni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of a creative speculation. He has surpassed the sage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. He is called a Muni fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as a mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to the past misdeeds, and he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active and is not influenced by the attachment of or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification, and detachment is the absence of such a sensual attachment. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor detachment because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry when his attempts are unsuccessful. A Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. Text 57 Translation. He who is without attachment, who does not rejoice when he obtains good, nor lament when he obtains evil, is firmly fixed in a perfect knowledge. There is always some upheaval in the material world, which may be good or evil. One who is not agitated by such material upheavals, who is unaffected by a good or evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there is always the possibility of a good and evil because this world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in the Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil because he is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good absolute. Such a consciousness is in Krishna situates one in a perfect transcendental position called technically samadhi. Text 58 explanation. One who is able to withdraw his senses from the sense object as the tortoise draws his limbs within the shell is to be understood as truly situated in knowledge. The test of a yogi, devotee, or a self realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictations of the senses. This is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. The senses are compared to a venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control the serpents like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do not and some of them do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and do nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example set herein is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any time, at any moment, wind up his senses and exhibit them again at any time for a particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of a Krishna conscious person are used only for some particular purpose to the service of the Lord and are withdrawn otherwise. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within. Text 59 Translation. The embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, though the taste for sense object remains, but ceasing such engagement by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Unless one is transcendentally situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from the sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a deceased person from a certain types of eatable. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatable. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual processes like Ashtanga Yoga is a matter of yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, pratyartha, dharana, dhyana, etc. Is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge, but one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for the less intelligent neotypes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good if one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna consciousness, he automatically loses his taste for a plain thing. That concludes text 59 explanation of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita of chapter 2. Hare Krishna, keep listening. Thank you so much.